Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for watching another interview here with me, William Wallace. My show, William Wallace for America. We're getting a little bit of a late start, so sorry about the scheduled time being moved back a little bit. Had a technical difficulty on my end. And with me today is State Representative of Louisiana, Danny McCormick. Representative McCormick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, William. How you doing today?
I tell you what, any day I get to talk about freedom and liberty, it's a great day. And to get a chance to bring you on to talk and share you with my listeners, it's even a better day. So,
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be on.
well, I've been traveling the state for the last recently, and I've been asking a lot of people about freedom and liberty. It's not I've always had a passion for freedom and liberty, but I'm really starting to see where we're losing our freedoms and liberties more and more. And as I talk to more and more people in the country and ask them that question, where they think we're losing freedom and liberty, I'm getting more and more unique answers. And I'll catch up to speed about that. A lot of people, when you talk about freedom and liberty, they just think First Amendment, Second Amendment, and freedom of religion. But the more people I ask, they're talking about medical freedom, the bureaucracies, the agencies, and the elected officials that aren't doing their job to protect our freedoms and liberties. And you've got an organization that I want to talk about, which is, of course, a LiberTea. And so I said, you're going to be the man to bring on about this. So, and we're going to talk about Golden Arrow a little bit. So, first off, where are you located? Where's your district?
Well, my district right now is North Bossier Parish, North Caddo Parish, West Caddo Parish, and Southwest Caddo Parish. It's my district is mostly rural. I tell everybody that my district is big and rural, just like me. So we're a good match.
I like to, so are you in the heart of an area that loves freedom and liberty the most of Louisiana, or do you think you're that it's not anything different than the rest of the United States?
Actually, I surround the area, which is Shreveport, that has a negative influence on freedom and liberty. I think that's why the people that I represent are so liberty minded. It's because, unlike a lot of parishes that are mostly Republican parishes, we have to constantly fight to keep our freedom and liberty. So we've kind of been in this fight from the beginning, before the pandemic lockdowns came. So we were organized and ready to go when they came.
I want to talk more about. I want to introduce people to LiberTea here in a minute, but I always tell people that I think that our freedoms and liberties are being stolen through the agencies and the government legislation and the different bureaucracies. But we get these elected officials that run for office, and they run talking about how they're going to protect our freedoms or protect our liberties, and they're going to cut taxes and do all these great, wonderful things that sounds American. But then they get in office, and I always say that I don't know that they change as much as the system swallows them up. But you started a PAC to help candidates make better decisions. Is that right?
That's correct. And the name of that PAC is Liberty PAC. And we this last school board season, we put on two couple of Liberty candidate academies across the state, teaching grassroots people how to campaign and win office. And we were very successful. We had multiple people across the state get elected, and we're really proud of that.
Well, yeah, you had it across the state, and other than your area.
Yes. We had we went in our Liberty Candidate Academies. They come from all the way from Jefferson Parish to Shreveport and Ruston, Louisiana, to be able to go to these classes. People are motivated. They're motivated to get involved, but they need guidance, because you have to know how to get elected before you can get elected. And there's certain things you do and don't do, and that's what our Liberty candidate academies do. They teach you how to do it, and they teach you how to do it grassroots. And if I melted it all down in one single sentence, it would be this: knock on doors, talk to the people, get to know them. That's what grassroots have to do. It's nothing but hard work. I tell everybody, running for office grassroots is kind of a lot's like digging a ditch with a shovel. It's nothing but hard work, but it's simple. Get elected is not that hard, but you've got to be able to knock on doors and work hard.
Now, what you're doing, it sounds like it's parallel to what the Leadership Institute does. Did you get training from Leadership Institute, or is this something that you devised yourself and you came up with?
We actually worked with Young Americans for Liberty to help come up with these classes. One of the vice presidents come down and talk to one, and then Chris Anders, another gentleman that works with them closely, come down to teach the other one. But Young Americans for Liberty has a very good way to train us how to train other people, and that's kind of the model we go off of is Young Americans for Liberty.
So basically, when you started Liberty PAC, you filed a format that you were taught, just kind of a common sense model to help freedom-minded or liberty-minded people win elections, correct?
Yeah, yes, and the PAC mostly is to raise money to put on these Liberty candidate academies, and then if we find candidates that are worthwhile, we will actually sometimes even give donations. But the Liberty PAC is kind of the funding mechanism for what we're doing.
So do they find you, or you find them? I mean, I guess it works both ways.
Well, are you talking about the candidates?
Yes, the candidates.
Well, that kind of that ties into Operation Golden Arrow. Across the state, we have the largest grassroots organization in the state. We have just about right around 60,000 people that we communicate with regularly through our emails. You can find them at McCormick, the number 4la.com. If anybody wants to go sign up for our grassroots organization, and so we have communications with people across the state. We put together search committees in areas. What we really like to work with, William, are candidates that have been involved and fought in the grassroots organizing, because they have the scars to show that they can stand up to the fight. What you really have happen a lot of times, I've seen it in Baton Rouge and at the local level, is you put a good old girl or good old boy in office that's, conservative, but they've never been in the fight before. What's that old saying? Everybody's got a plan till they get hit in the nose.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, they need they need to be grounded. They need to been in the fight at a grassroots level and show that they don't give to the pressure.
So Golden Arrow then is an arm of Liberty PAC. So Liberty PAC is the funding mechanism, where people can donate at LibertyForLouisiana.com, right?
That's correct.
Is that correct? And
that is correct.
So Liberty PAC is the funding mechanism, but Golden Arrow is the mechanism to which you either find candidates that are liberty oriented, or they find you to get training to be able to campaign and, I guess, hone their skills of conservatism or fighting for liberty or freedom. Is that a way to say it?
That's generally correct. That's right. That's generally correct. I mean, and there's so many different things about running for office that people don't know. Like, for instance, there's apps like the I-360 app that you can put on your phone, that you can create walkbooks out of. You can, when you knock on doors, you can enter information into that app. It recognizes voters that go vote. I mean, you're not interested in spending a lot of time knocking on doors of people that don't go vote. Right. So, I mean, like in my district, being large and rural like it is, I knocked on 5,000 doors, and it took me 6 months to knock on those 5,000 doors. Well, I need to knock on the doors of the chronic voters, because 6 months is a long time to knock on doors.
Oh yeah, exactly. That I don't know if did you know the story about when I ran for state rep?
I didn't.
I knocked on every single door in the district.
Wow.
And to your point, I did it for almost 8 months. And
right.
And what I did was I got out every more. I basically, I'm self-employed. I was able to take a ton of time off. I mean, I worked here and there, but I basically knocked from 10 in the morning until until the streetlights came on.
Well, and, that's great.
And then the other thing that I do that I'll add to your training, if it helps you, knocking on doors on Sundays isn't always acceptable. And then knocking on doors at night or early morning was tough. So what I would do is I would just ride my bike on evenings or in the early morning, between 8 and 10 or on Sundays. And if somebody was outside taking out their trash or walking to their car, that was fair, because you're outside. I don't have to knock on your door. I could say, hey, can I hand you one of these brochures? And, it wasn't disturbing them. And it would be a
Exactly.
quick way to get some other people. But I knocked on every door. And to your point, I do kind of wish I would have just knocked on just the chronic voters, because those are the
Right.
ones, like you said, are going to go out and vote. So, I know that you have some things that you stand for personally for your office. Do those translate over to your, over to Liberty Pack and the Golden Arrow?
You bet. Liberty Pack has a survey that you have to fill out before we'll endorse you, and that's important that you line up with our Liberty values. Like parental rights would be big. Like for school board members, what about parental rights? You have to agree not to use the roll forward loophole to raise the property taxes of the people. You want the people to vote on it. You don't want the bureaucrats rolling forward taxes and increasing property taxes without a vote. So there's several different aspects of the questions on our survey that make sure you're aligned with us liberty-wise.
What's the roll forward taxes you're talking about? That's new. That's new to me.
Well, for instance, I'll just give you an example. Let's say the certain property tax is 10 mills, and you have a reassessment of the businesses and homes in your area, and say the 10 mills collects $1 million. Well, you do you reassess everything, and then let's say that the value of property goes up. So if you collected 10 mills, it would be $1.1 million, which is a tax increase, correct?
Right.
You're collecting more in taxes. So what happens is the millage drops down to where you could just legally collect $1 million, but they have the loophole of rolling it forward and raising it. See, what most people don't understand is that property taxes are a percentage tax. So they adjust for inflation. I hear people all the time going, well, it's been 10 mills for 10 years. We haven't. Well, yes, they do go up. When they reappraise, most agencies roll their taxes forward, which increases the taxes without a vote of the people. And most people do not realize that.
I'm glad you brought that up, Danny. Because to your point, that's one of the ways that freedom is under attack in America. And that I pointed out, a lot of people, just like I said, a lot of people thinking First Amendment, Second Amendment, and I repeat that over and over again for a reason, because I get tired of people on our side, representative on the Republican side, are saying, oh no, our freedoms and liberties are under attack. You're stupid, you're a conspiracy theorist. But then when I did an interview with Wendy Thibodeau, the assessor down in Thibodeau, Louisiana, I don't know and she had that constitutional amendment that didn't pass. Do you know about that? Because in Louisiana, an assessor can roll the millage forward all they want, but every because of the Louisiana Constitution, every 4 years they don't have a choice. They have to take it whether they need it or not. And we've got agencies or districts in Louisiana that have millions of dollars in the bank that don't need any more of our money, but they continually, as you said, roll that village all the way forward, or they take all they can get, even if they don't need it because they want it, or they take it, and it's against the will of the people. And I know we voted in originally, but like you said, it's one of those hidden taxes, and they're basically taking tax dollars that they don't need, that would be better in the hands of the people, and it is robbing our freedom, because money is another form of freedom that we are losing in this country in the form of taxes.
I guess the question we should ask ourselves, William, is are we better at spending our money, or is the government better at spending their money? And
exactly.
I think that's kind of the basic question. Something I think the Republicans get wrong. The Republican, I guess, for as taxes, what we promote is you increase the tax base and you lower the tax rate. That's what we want to do. We want everybody to pay taxes, but we want that way we can lower the rates down to where they're not unreasonable. in Louisiana, we have so many special interest groups, especially large corporations. And here in Caddo Parish, we got the Shreveport, the Caddo Bossier Port, which is just unbelievable. The tens of millions of dollars they collect in taxes,
Right.
and the hundreds of millions of dollars they create tax havens for these large corporations not to have to pay taxes. It's unbelievable. And the public is being led astray. They don't realize I mean, they're worried about paying their house note. They got to change the baby's
Right.
diapers. They got to, got schoolwork to do. And they have two type of people representing them usually. Well, number one is part of the establishment, and they won't tell them the truth. And then you got these good old boys and good old girls that go into these establishment settings, and they, the lawyer is over here in their ear, the lawyer for whatever government
Right.
organization is, and well, you may get sued if you do that. Well, you may get sued if you don't do it, buddy.
Exactly. Yeah.
They are being led down the wrong path. You've got to be able to challenge everything. And you've got to be able to not trust anyone. I mean, they're in the business of taking your money and sticking it in their pocket. They're not going to tell you the truth most of the time.
And to your point, the representative, the taxes, like you said, it's a lot of these bureaucrats. It's not even the elected officials in many cases are mismanaging our money, and they're the ones representing the government. Like you said, who's better at managing our money? Us or the government. We can already see what's going on a national level, and we already see that on a state level in Louisiana, we're going to have an $800 million surplus, or is it $800 billion surplus? What's the surplus? Is it million or billion this year?
Well, it's a few billion right now, but we're going in a couple of years we're going to be at a loss. We got all the federal money
or something. Yeah, we have a surplus right now.
I don't know exactly which number you're referring to, but yes, we have a surplus right now, and they're wanting to spend every bit of it, right? Let's get rid of this money. Let's have a party. Let's go, let's drink and eat and be merry. But here in 2 years, this is the important part. Here in a year or two, when we have a Republican governor, we're going to be in a bind because we're over here acting like a bunch of drunk sailors on Friday night. What we're doing right now. Yes, we have it.
What's be interesting now is the Democrat governor now to give away and say, hey, I'm giving all the money away. We got this money. We're going to give it away. I'm Robin Hood. I'm taking care of the poor. And then next year when we have a Republican governor and we're broke and, and underfunded, then, they'll say, well, you see, we elected those Republicans and they're not doing their job. They're now we're broke, and that's the blame game that some of these elected officials do on each other. But what I respect about you're very, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to make sure we've got people to be acquainted, with Liberty PAC and with your Golden Arrow project, because you are really zoned in, on not only training candidates, but making more awareness to the freedom, liberty, fiscally responsible type of government that we need. And I do make a shameless plug that we're running your scroll at the bottom if anybody wants to donate, to your organization. But with that being said, though, how do we get the bureaucracies and the agencies that are spending their budgets? The politicians are approving these budgets, but the agencies are spending the money like drunken sailors also. And that's, and they're not being held accountable to that. How do we work around that, though, Representative?
We've got to educate the public, and we've got to start getting involved at a grassroots level. And I will say this, the more local the politics, the better. The more local control, the better, because that way it's harder to hide it on a small local level. I'll give you one example. The 0.45 sales tax is going to be expiring here in a few years. What a lot of local elected officials are going to want us to send us to Baton Rouge and renew that, so we can keep bringing the pork home. Well,
yeah, right.
My idea is I won't be voting to renew that tax or any other tax. But if you have a project at home that you think's worthwhile building, why don't you go to your people and see if they're willing to finance it? Don't send your money to Baton Rouge and then
Right.
expect us to go back there and trade our souls
Right.
for 30 pieces
Right.
of silver to get a half a piece of silver back. I mean, right now, the way our model's setting up, our Huey P. Long model, we send our money to Baton Rouge. We go down there. A lot of representatives, they go down there and trade every moral, every principle they ever had for a
Yep.
few of the dollars to bring back home. Why aren't we sending
Exactly.
them to Baton Rouge? Let's just don't send them in the first place. That way we
Right.
don't have to try to
Exactly.
get them back.
I love.
Keep them here.
I love this forward thinking. It sounds like common sense, but the problem with common sense is, I think most people lose it when they get, when they get to the either the legislature in Baton Rouge or when they get there. And look, and I don't want to criticize anybody individually because when I met almost everybody on an individual basis, talked to everybody, and individually, everybody really wants to fight for their districts and represent their people, that elected them. I think that the problem is when it gets to Baton Rouge, collectively speaking, the bureaucrats start whispering in everybody's ear and says, "Ooh, we don't get this funding. This department's gonna get pulled. Your district's gonna suffer. That district's not gonna get a bridge." And before you know, everybody, well, we got to get the bridge. We got to do this. So collectively, everybody says the best thing to do is to pass this bill, and we're going to spend a little bit of it today. But I got to tell you, I'm segueing into Rhonda Butler's bill. I don't know. I'm sure you're familiar with it. I'm really excited about this. Hers is if the state sets up a fund to be able for communities that can borrow from that fund to be able to do their road projects or the building projects or the bridge projects, and then they pay back that loan with a very small interest rate. They're actually building the fund and making it bigger for other communities around the state. Are you familiar with this one?
I'm actually not. I'll be interested to see that bill, but I haven't looked at it, so I really can't comment on it.
Talked about it today.
I'm sorry.
She talked about it the other day. It's real
Okay.
interesting. It's being able to borrow from a fund that the state has set up where it's like a bank and a community, a parish or whatever can borrow from that fund to fund the project that they're working on, and then they set it up with payment terms with a very low interest rate, so that they pay it back, and the little low interest rate basically builds a fund for bigger projects and for other communities later, and you're never having to use tax dollars. It's money that always goes back in there and builds with a little small interest rate.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not familiar with it. It sounds interesting. I'd like to look at it.
She just dropped it.
Okay,
Yeah, I think she just so you got to check into that.
I will.
But so let's talk about your values. I see on your site what you stand for, and I'm assuming that translates over to Liberty PAC or Golden Arrow. And you've got we the people, economic development, pro-liberty, lower taxes, Second Amendment, Christian values, small business, working class, pro-life, and smaller government. This doesn't sound like a partisan thing. This sounds like something that everybody could agree on, right?
Yeah, there is a lot of things in there a lot of people can agree on. I mean, but it comes back to the fact, do we think we can spend our money better, or do we need to give it to the government and let them spend it for us? To me, it's simple. I think Baton Rouge budget needs to be cut with a machete, not a butter knife. We go down there and we talk about cutting, and we cut 10 cents, and we just, oh my gosh, this is so painful. We need to go after it with a machete. I mean, I'm talking about the Louisiana Department of Health. It's just the most wasted money you've ever. All I've seen them Louisiana Department of Health do with large percentages of their money is attack our freedoms and liberties. Now, why do we want to keep giving money to the Louisiana Department of Health when the biggest part of their goal is to attack our freedoms and liberties? What about these colleges?
How they've done that? You have some examples offhand on how they've done that?
Well, they were behind lots of the mask mandates, lots of the recommendations. They were actually, and here in Louisiana, we have all these licenses for like hair braiders. I mean, you need a license to be a hair braider. That's unbelievable. We have more license than any other state in the union. It is at my last check, but it's unbelievable all the license we have. Well, what did they do during COVID? Well, if you don't close your barbershop, we're going to pull your license then. So everybody was having underground haircuts. Can you imagine an underground haircut? Boy, howdy. Boy, that sounds like a real free country. So So and like our
Representative,
colleges.
just so you know, I didn't need any underground haircuts.
Well, sad to say, what little hair I've got left, I've been
Yeah.
cutting for the last. I haven't kept any barbers in business for the last 15 or 20 years, so my barber didn't change. It's always been me for the about last 15 or 20 years. Yeah, you're right there, William. But
I'm
some
more
people
worried.
still have hair.
I'm more worried about coastal erosion.
That's right. That's right. I agree. I agree.
So how do you connect candidates with Golden Arrow to be able to make sure that they're going to? I know you have a questionnaire to be able to make sure that they're going to fight for freedom and liberty in our state, and that translates to our country because the best way to fight for freedom and liberty is in our own backyard. And when national government sees that this state, the people are fighting for it, that state's prospering, they kind of go, they're doing all right. We're going to leave them alone. Is that how that works?
Well, I tell you what, it's a fight. Every time I get a candidate elected, I tell them, "Here's my cell phone number. If you need me, call me." But I'm going to tell you what, there's a tremendous amount of pressure on elected officials to give into the establishment, keep the gravy train coming, keep this pork barrel at the, keep it coming home. And so it takes a lot, like self-determination. Like I mentioned earlier, our preparations are candidates that have been in the fight. The
Right.
grassroots
Exactly.
candidates that showed they can hold up to. They've been hit in the nose and they didn't lose their concentration, so to speak. So,
Right.
I mean, you really need people that have been in the grassroots fight already. That's what I prefer more than anything. And if not, you need to have a good support group. Like for instance, if you get a good grassroots solid school board candidate elected, you can take a couple of more that may not have an experience as they do and get them elected to them, let them form a group to support each other.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
very important.
I'm going back to the licensure requirements. If that could translate to the school boards, where they're not putting the same burdens, on parents or teachers. In that case, it's the same thing that the Pelican Institute is working on, is how to reduce that licensure requirements, like like you said, for the hair braiders and all those other things, because it's another way that freedom is under attack in our country. Especially Louisiana, we're the most licensed state, I think, when it comes to miscellaneous things like braiding hair. And not that you should have some sort of a license to cut hair when you do it, but the whole thing about having, Pelican Institute was talking the other day, there's like small, even not just the licensing, but even the small requirements for those businesses once they are licensed is burdensome, not only on their bottom line, but on freedom. A hair salon has to have a certain number of coat hooks in there. And there's so now,
man, boy, the government's here to help. What would we do without the government counting our coat hooks?
I know we have no place to hang our coats, and that just shows
gosh.
you. And when you think about that example, like you said, I love the sarcasm that we're doing, because you're doing a great job of emphasizing how minute government wants to be in our lives. And when we allow them to license something, they're going to get down to the bottom, down even to the minutia. And we think of terms of, we got these elected officials that we've elected. They've promised freedom and liberty. They promised what they said, but it's the bureaucracies within those organizations that somebody says, I got an idea. I have a place to hang a hook. My coat went over there. I want and that's how it all starts. And we think it's, we're pulling it out of our ears, but that's how government works once we allow it to get bigger. So that's why we need more candidates like the ones that you're putting out there with Golden Arrow and LiberTea to be able to make sure that we don't grow government in there. I always say, I ask everybody this question on my national interviews, and because this is going to be my national part of my national podcast, I want to ask you, where do you think freedoms and liberties are most under attack in America?
Regulations, private property rights, regulations, regulating business. Just, the Trump economy, in my opinion, the Trump economy, the biggest thing they did was they cut regulations. Trump said for every one regulation you put on the books, we want to take new regulation, we want to take one off. I think the number is they wound out taking 21 off for every one they put on the books. We are the American people, William.
Right.
We have the ability to create things. We've created the greatest economy in the world, the greatest group of people in the world. We're a melting pot. We're not perfect, but we're the least racist country in the world. I mean, we are the greatest country in the world. And we did that by people making their own individual choices. Private property rights, that's huge under attack in Baton Rouge right now.
Right.
At your local level, local zoning, we have bureaucrats that charge us $350 so we can take a hammer and a nail and put a roof on our house. They're nothing but these bureaucrats. They set out, you give them an inch and they take 353 miles. I mean,
right, exactly.
We have got to do away with regulations. Government's not the answer. Government's the problem.
In a lot of these local governments, you have to pay not a fine. You have to pay for a license or a permit to paint your house or to do work on your house, like you said, the roof. I mean, imagine that. You got to go all the red tape you have to go through just to put a roof on your house. And I get it. They want to make sure your plumbing's right, your electricity is right. But they take it more than 10 steps too far, instead of saying, okay, we're going to make sure that as long as you have a licensed electrician, no, they're going to come over there and require you all kinds of different things to do, which only drives the prices up, which, as we all know, taxes and money equals freedom, or less taxes.
That's right. It's not about it. The only thing it's not about safety. It's about revenue collection. That's how they're finding an excuse to take money out of the working men and women's pockets and put in their pockets. It's so much that's done today by governor. It's just revenue collection. That they may use the excuse that, I guess somebody needs to protect me from painting my house the wrong color.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
If I drive a nail too deep in my roof and my roof leaks, that's on me. That's my house.
Exactly.
It's just revenue collection. It's control and it's revenue collection. That's government. That's what we're getting closer and closer to. And hey, it's a lot. There's a lot of truth when they talk about the uniparty. I mean, somebody would say that the Democrats are taking us towards a cliff at 100 miles an hour, and the Republicans are taking us towards that same cliff at 70 miles an hour, but we're still headed towards a cliff. I mean, we look at the spending in Washington, the spending at the state level, like a bunch of drunk sailors. The fact that you use the force of law and the point of a gun to take money away from mothers and fathers that are working for their family, that's not good people doing that. There's nothing moral about that. It's not good.
And just the IRS, when they were armed the IRS, to be enforced tax collection. I mean, it's bad enough that the post office has a SWAT team, which I don't know why they would need a SWAT team. I mean, they're just delivering mail, right? Right.
Well, let's go back. Let's go back to Louisiana. Let's talk about Louisiana. The fire marshals 10 years ago, I'm gonna say, I don't know exact period of time, about 10 years ago, the fire marshal showed up at your place and he had a clipboard, he had on khaki pants, and he had on, a business suit. Now he shows up with, he looks like the SWAT team walking in the door, the fire marshal. Why does the fire marshal need all these guns and all this stuff? I mean, the reason they have it, they'll tell you, is they're worried about their safety, but it's an intimidation factor. That's the reason, police officers are the ones that stand between us and the bad guys, not the fire marshal. That's an intimidation factor.
So here's something. Here's a thought. I want to share this. This is a good thought. Our listeners will really like, get a lot out of this thought. Who's doing this? And when I say that, we elect people, and whether we don't like the things that they're doing when they get in office, or we don't like how they're spending our money, or these agencies that you walk up to the counter when you have to deal with the agencies, that front counter person is friendly, but we always get these burdensome regulations. Or in this case, where when they get drunk on power, They got fire marshals armed up. You've got, post office SWAT teams, and you've got all these different agencies that are all getting, I'll say swatted up, for lack of a better word. And we're hearing about all these agencies that are getting armed vehicles, and we hear about all these different agencies that are slapping fines and penalties on the people. Who's doing this? I mean, like, these are people that live in our community that work there. These are our family that work at these agencies. These elected officials that we do, but where do these come from? Where do you think this is coming from?
I think it comes from a country of people that don't remember their fathers and grandfathers that fought and died and bled across this whole world for our freedom. I think it's spoiled-nosed the brats that don't appreciate what real men and women have done to build this country. Why would we destroy the greatest country in the world? We have done more for freedom and liberty, and we're sitting here at our house. Well, what about the mask Nazis? I mean, we go in these stores. I mean, who wants to sit at the front door and chase somebody around and scream at them because they don't wear a mask? Where did those people come from? I don't understand that neither. I don't know how you can go from one day being a productive citizen and the next day screaming at somebody because they're not wearing a mask. Now, they don't care if you're wearing them properly. They don't care if they're sterile. They don't care if they help. But you better put a mask on. I mean, it's I don't understand that. But I will tell you that the way you fight that is you don't wear a mask. Now, I know we're a little bit late on that. I mean, that ship's done sailed. But I had a lot of encounters with a mask. I didn't wear a mask. I mean, it was I feel like it was. Somebody said, I said, why don't you wear a mask? I said, I got a medical condition. I said, every time I put a mask on, it makes me want to throw up. So, but I would tell you about me, William. I have the fire of liberty in my bones. It's not a conscious reaction. When somebody challenges my liberty and my freedom, it's not something I have to think about. It's just a reaction. I just automatically do it. So, that's just the way God made me. Now, and I'm tell you, I'm as as a down to earth conservative person as I can be, but I don't think I have the right to tell other people how to live their lives. I don't have that right. Now, if you come to my house, you're going to live you're going to act in a certain way. But but I don't think I should, as long as somebody is not hurting me or my property, I don't have the right to tell them how to live. I'm a Christian. I think that we need revival in the pulpits. I think that needs to happen. I don't think we need to use the force of law to make people change their behavior. I think we need revival. We need to search out the souls of these people. I think Christ, in my opinion, is the answer to lots of the problems. We need morals. We need self-imposed morals. We don't need government imposing morals on us. We need self-imposed morals. So, but that's freedom of choice. Even my God, Jesus Christ, gave me the ability to accept him or reject him.
Right.
He even recognizes my free will.
Exactly.
But government's going to take that away, or we're going to take that away from our neighbor. I mean, that's even my God is liberty minded. It says in the Bible, "The Spirit of the Lord, there's liberty. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty." And I believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, like even our Creator trusted us with that. It's interesting. Alexis de Tocqueville and said, and I'm not going to get the quote exactly correct, but the gist of it was that the power of the people in our country came from the pulpits. Alexis de Tocqueville wrote about that when he came to America. But the other thing that you may think of is that we think of freedom and liberty being under attack through government, and it is, by government regulations and rules and all the different things that they can put in place to control us. But what you made me think about is, and I want to give you credit for this thought, is that what we don't think about is once freedom and liberty is taken away or controlled by government, I think it suppresses people's mindsets in such a way that they get depressed, they give up hope, they give up their ambition, which is another freedom that the government robs inadvertently by suppressing us with rules and regulations. And an example of what I'm saying is, I was at the airport last week, And I see lots of people around there with masks, still wearing masks. Now, and granted, some of them may have a medical condition. Maybe some of them are fighting the disease that they don't want to do that. And even before COVID, you see that every so often, but you see it more and more, and you can kind of look and tell. And I don't want to stereotype. You can kind of look and tell and say, yeah, they probably don't have a medical condition. They probably still are feeling suppressed by government regulations. They probably have still been affected by government regulations, especially when they take the mask off and they're eating. I've seen plenty of people in the airport take their mask off. They're sitting there, they're eating, they're drinking, they're walking around their mask hanging, and then they go to put it back on. These are people. It's an example of how government eroding and taking away our freedoms, suppressing it, has, I think, an effect on the mental ability of some people who become complacent and give up their freedoms willingly, which is another way I think government robs our freedoms. What do you think about that?
I agree. You're exactly right. As far as long as masks are voluntary, I don't care who wears them but I'm not wearing one. What the problem
Right.
is when they start trying to force it on me. If those people have been scared by their government so much that they feel like they need it for no reason whatsoever besides their government put fear in them, that's shameful.
Right.
That's shameful that they did that. I mean, it's really shameful that the freedoms and liberties that were taken away from us. I mean, I don't know. We don't know how many vaccine injured people it is. Let me tell you this little story. In 2020, I was in health and welfare, and I ran a bill, and the bill was very simple. It said you could not make the COVID-19 vaccine mandatory. That was in 2020.
It's simple.
This is what I was told. You go back and watch this. This is what I was told. That was the craziest thing they ever heard. There's no way they were ever going to make this vaccine mandatory. It's a solution looking for a problem. That's what they said. And within months, they had made the COVID-19 vaccine mandatory. I told them this. I said, yes, you can go back and look in the committee and look at the recording in committee. I said, yes, they will make this mandatory. I said, there's tens of billions of dollars at stake. They'll do it. I mean, they're so simple. They're tyrants. If they can use the force of law and point of gun to make you do something, they're going to do it. What a great business model, right? The mob, it worked for the mob for years. I guess that's why government patterned, worked good for the mob, which I've heard the mob was actually more fair than the government. So we'll see.
Oh, yeah. I'd have to agree with you because the mob wanted you to make money.
That's right. That's exactly right.
The government doesn't see the government like tax what you make, but they realize that the less that you make, the more dependent you become on them, and the more they can control you and manipulate you. Which I got another idea I just thought of. You talk about that you're not worried about people's freedoms and liberties. When they choose, as long as it doesn't affect you. It's almost like the people's way they choose to live their lives. Whether they become, LGBTQ, whether they want to become a man or a woman, like you, I say, hey, look, you know what? Whatever you want to do, that's your freedom, it's your liberty. I don't care as long as you don't force it on me, of course. And then I'll be able to do that because, like you, I like my freedom and liberty, and I like my manhood. I'll leave it at that. But what I think that's another way that our freedoms and liberties are being robbed is because the media and the government uses the narrative that's formed around those news stories. We'll say they're using that narrative to be able to take freedoms and liberties from the people that don't agree with it. Instead of saying, look, you don't agree with it, that's fine. They're saying, no, if you don't agree with it, you're going to be fined and penalized for this or that if you don't pay for it or you don't agree with it. Is that another way to put it, you think?
I agree. That is. And like I said, when somebody becomes 18, they can live their life. They can do it. And I don't believe in self-mutilation of young people before they get of the age to decide if they want sex changes. That's not what it is. But once people, if they'll stay out of my space, I'll stay out of their space. That's pretty much the live and let live. That's pretty much the rule I go by. We'll go back to zoning. Every time we talk about zoning, they want to threaten me with there's going to be a pig farm next to my house. and there's going to be a strip club next to my house, which we don't have. We don't have any pig farms or any strip clubs in my area. But evidently, if we don't have zoning, after hundreds of years, we're going to get a lot of them. And I tell
Right.
them I'd rather have a pig farm with strippers in it than I had the government to tell me when to cut my grass. I mean that down to my, I'd lots rather be surrounded by pigs and strippers than government officials. So that's me. I mean, I truly believe that. That's the way I feel.
That is priceless. I am going to steal that. I would rather. That is really good. And I could probably take a one step further, but I'll wait off camera on that one. But I think, like I said, I think that that parental rights are being stolen, like you said about certain ages. Now we're finding
let's
out
talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about that a little bit. Well, last year, it's never been a law in Louisiana. It's a law that you had to put your child in first grade. Kindergarten wasn't mandatory, and you only had to put your child in by the time they were 7 years old. Well, early childhood education, that sounds great, right? We're going to strip these kids out of their homes with their mothers and put them in school or in these government schools because that works better, right?
Right.
But we have that ability now, or before last year, that for parents to choose whether they want to keep their child home or put them in preschool. That's a choice, right? Well, evidently they weren't making the right decision, because last year we had a real important bill come through. And that bill said that you had to start your child, kindergarten become mandatory, and they had to be in by a certain birthday. Parents couldn't make that decision anymore. And that bill passed. And actually at one time when it first come through, it had the truancy rules in it to where if you didn't do it, you could be arrested and put in jail. So I said, okay, guys, let me ask you a question. So if we have some hardened criminal out there that wants to start their kid in school at kindergarten at 6 instead of 5 for some reason, you're going to put them in jail, right? I mean, how much sense does that make?
Zero.
I would love for that child to stay in that home as long as possible. But if the mother needs to put them in preschool, great. They had that choice, but no.
Right.
Evidently, the people of Louisiana wasn't making the right choice, so government had to step in and show them they could do it better.
And now we'll wait to see what happens in the next generation, the repercussions that come out of that. How many people, like you said, hardened criminals? See, well, I'll talk about that in a second too. How many? Let's say somebody had 2 strikes against them already, and then they break this law that, of course, it's not a felony. Of course, they break the law that they're being a good parent, but they realize their child's not ready for school. They keep them out, so now they got the 3rd strike that puts them away for life. Is that, is that a possibility? I mean, of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but only to make the point that when government gets involved, we see how bad it gets.
But this is being encouraged by both sides. Let's go back to our children. Do we think the government is better at deciding when our children should start kindergarten if they started at 5 or 6? I mean, is the government better at doing this than the adults? And most of them in Baton Rouge say, yeah, this is how a lot of politicians, they look down their nose at the people that elected them. These are really good people. They are good, down to earth people, but they just won't make the right choice if you leave it up to them. That's the way they view these things.
Why do you think that some elected officials get in there? And look, and for our national listeners that don't know you, I've seen you in the legislature, and I want to say how this. I mean this in the most respectful, kindest way. You don't give care about, when you're holding to your values and your beliefs and your ideologies. You don't care whether you're going to hurt somebody's feelings. You care about doing what's right. And I respect that all the time. Even sometimes if I don't agree with you on something, I respect the fact that you stick to your.
You didn't agree with me on something?
I agree with you on everything, actually. I'm just making the point that even if I don't agree with you, I respect the fact that you hold true to your values and you're a man of your word. And that's
the kicker is what I tried to do is I did a couple of things when I went to Baton Rouge. one thing I tried to do is I said I'd never vote against the bill because I didn't like the author. And that's actually been harder to do than I thought it was, because there's some people I really don't like down there. But they bring a good bill, I try to support it because it's not about me and my ego and my personality. And the second thing is this: I get, and be totally honest with you, I get along fine with the Democrats in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
I've never had a cross word with a Democrat. They line up on the other side of the ball. They put on their uniform, I put it, and then we go head to head, right? Where I
Right.
have problem with the Republicans, because I think they're on my team. As soon as I turn my back, they hamstring me. So
It's
go ahead.
No, I've seen the vote. I've watched the board plenty of times, where I've seen Republicans voting against Republicans. The Democrats stick together on their beliefs and ideologies. And I haven't seen some, 101 to 1. Yeah. You know,
Sometimes I've been the one.
that's what I was referring to.
But what I also try to use is my principles. These are my principles. And I'm not saying I'm right on every issue or every idea by any means, but these are my principles. And I'm going to vote my principles. I'm not going to worry about what, kind of spin somebody can put on it. Or
Right.
I'm not worried about that. I'm going to vote my principles. And my principles normally align with the small business owners and the working class people of this state. I always say I'm their lobbyist. I'm the one looking out for them in Baton Rouge. They don't have a lobbyist down there, so I'm their lobbyist. That's the stance I try to make. And like I said, if you'll just stick with your principles and not think that we're politicians. Actually, the only reason government really exists is to protect our liberties and our freedoms. That's what
Exactly
it
right.
exists for, not to steal them. So we are so far from the founders' ideas set before in this little bitty thin constitution that they would probably not even recognize this country anymore. But I'm in the fight, and I'm fighting that fight, and I appreciate the people that stand beside me in this fight and the people that put me there. And if we're the Louisiana politicians are probably about one of the lowest paid people in the world. And
Yeah,
so
exactly. Y'all have a full-time job, part-time pay.
that's right,
It's
exactly.
actually less
So
it's actually less than part-time pay because they still tax you, on your per diem to buy food and everything else. And I know we got to wrap up here in a second because I know you got an appointment we talked about already. But like you said, I think our country has moved so far away from what the founders, vision was. I don't think they envisioned bureaucracies and agencies and local government being able to create laws or regulations or policies or procedures or licensing that would control the people as much as we're being controlled right now. And I just don't know what's happening to our elected officials that aren't as freedom and liberty minded as you are when they get there. Like I said, I've met some of these people, they're great people. And then you watch how they vote, you watch their bills, and you go, wait a minute, that's not very freedom, liberty minded. What do you think happens to them, when they get in there? I have two more questions after that, but what do you think
yeah,
happens to them?
well, basically, and the two things I see that get most of them is power and prestige. We don't make any money, but we control billions of dollars. So everybody wants to tell us how smart we are and how good we look and how much hair I really don't have. I got more hair. So there is a lots of power and prestige, and actually, I think that's mostly what people trade their principles for, is that power and prestige. And then you do have the ones that are basically just the common thieves in my mind. They're going to Baton Rouge for a business model, but that's not really the people we're talking about. We're talking about ordinary people. Like I was talking to, I entered this year, or not this year, but my first term with a large amount of freshmen. And I'm talking about they stood firm for a little while, and then they kept falling and falling and falling. The pressure mounts. This is something I say, William, and this is something important to remember. To be loved in that building is to be hated outside by the people that sent you. And to be hated in that building is to be loved by the people that sent you. That's important to
Right.
know. If you're going to go down and you're going to represent your people, You're not going to be happy. The people that when you walk in that building, those people aren't going to be happy to see you. You're going to be a thorn in their side, and you're going to be a bad taste in their mouth the whole time you're here. When you go back home, those people love you because you've stood for their freedoms and liberties. I had an old man tell me, he said, son, he said, I'll buy a 4-wheel drive to get to town if I have to. Don't worry about that road. So, he was an ex-Marine though. So he valued his freedoms and liberty.
Right,
And,
exactly.
that my freedom of liberty in District 1 is not for sale. We're not giving them nothing. Our private property rights belong to us. We're not compromising with anybody. They belong to us. The communists are the ones that want to take away the private property rights. And freedom and liberty should preserve those private property rights.
I'm going to ask you one last question, before we start to wrap it up. This might be, and I know this will be hard to keep this one short, but gun rights.
Yeah.
What do you think's going to happen in Louisiana? I'd like to see, there's some states that have that their state is, or there's some parishes, and there's only a few parishes, but we're seeing in other states, other counties, where they're making their counties or their parish a sanctuary state, or county or parish. Do you think we can see that in Louisiana, on a bigger level?
I think that's a good idea, but I think we need to go way further than that. Number one, you need to make sure that your sheriff is a constitutional sheriff. And I'll say what that actually means is this. Is the sheriff in the parish you live in is the ultimate law enforcement authority. The feds shouldn't be allowed in that parish unless the sheriff allows them in that parish. He's got that much authority.
Right.
Constitutional sheriffs are important. Number two, we need to start arresting agencies, federal agencies that try to come in our state and enforce unconstitutional gun rights. And I'm talking about arresting them and putting them in jail. That's what's going to happen. We see what's going on in Congress now. I guess, the Republicans are in control of the House, and they're calling in these people and they're testifying them. They're saying these really mean words to them,
Yeah.
And I appreciate what they're doing, but nobody's going to jail. Those narcissistic people sitting behind those mics that have violated every right, they don't care what you call them. They don't care if you make fun of them. But you go putting them in jail, you'll have their attention. That's when things are going to change, when we take state sovereignty back and we control our own borders, and we start putting these federal people in jail that come into our state trying to enforce unconstitutional gun rights. That's when things will start changing.
You brought up something that I think is important to put an exclamation point and underline double here before we end our podcast, which is a lot of people. I mean, I believe that, the Second Amendment protects the First Amendment, and the First Amendment is, most sacred, and freedom of speech and religion and gun rights. However, oh my, that 10th Amendment is, when you really think about how much more power the 10th Amendment gives to people in a state. It really brings the power of our constitutional rights, our freedom, our liberty, closer to us at home, where we can walk in our backyard, i.e. Baton Rouge, and be able to go vote, our will, and have a better chance of our freedom and liberty being protected by our 10th Amendment and our elected officials. What do you think about that?
I'll tell you this. We always talk about the law of the land, and that we as Christians should follow the law of the land. That's the excuse they use to steal our freedoms and liberty. The law of the land is the U.S. Constitution. There's where all the freedoms and liberty. It doesn't restrict individuals. It restricts the government. So if you're going by the law of the land, we need to start putting federal bureaucrats in jail that come into our state, try to enforce these unconstitutional laws. That is the law of the land. That's where the Christians ought to be standing, on the true intent of the Constitution. William, you realize that we just slaughtered and ripped apart over 60 million babies over the last 50 years or so on a invalid Supreme Court ruling? We as a state sat back and watched tens of millions of babies be ripped apart in their mother's womb. It should be the safest place in the world, should be the mother's womb. And we let that happen on a ruling. Turns out it wasn't constitutional. You know why we did that? Because we didn't have the backbone to say in Louisiana, this is not going to work. we will not have abortion clinics in Louisiana. And that's what we got to get back to. State rights, state sovereignty. That's what we've
That's
got to
right.
get back to.
That's exactly right. And to your point, when you talk about the Constitution, a lot of these rules and regulations that I think are unconstitutional all across the board, from our gun rights to our pro-life rights, everything all across the boards were created by the organization, by the bureaucracies that were able to circumvent the Constitution without being, without those rules being passed through Congress. They're put in place by bureaucrats that were unelected and circumvent our Constitution.
What
So
they say, rules are not for me, they're for thee. That's the government status.
yeah, and we're finding that more and more. Well, Representative McCormick, I thank you so much for your time. I want you to hang on. I'm in the broadcast. I'll keep you on for one more minute offline. I want to thank you very much for your time, and I hope people go to liberty4la.com, or is it .com or .net? And it's .com, and check out more, of how they can get involved with electing elected officials that are going to be, freedom and liberty minded.
And also they can go to McCormick, the number 4la.com, and sign up and be part of Operation Golden Arrow.
I love it. We're going to do that.
We just done a gun giveaway, so they missed it. They
I
could have a chance at a free gun. So
you gotta share that with me, and I'll put it on my page.
There you
go.
I
we'll
agree.
raise even more money. And then
That's right.
and we're going to have you on again soon about the upcoming session in a couple of weeks. We'll bring you back on, let you talk about your legislation for Louisiana and how we're going to solve the problems in our state, here pretty soon, right?
You bet. That's exactly right.
All right, thank you so much. Hang on one second. Everybody else, please share the interview. It's going to be here on Facebook for a little bit. It's on Cloud Hub, also Wallace for America, and it's also going to be on my YouTube channel, my Rumble channel, and the audio will be used to make a podcast. It's going to be on my podcast playlist, which is on any podcast app. Please, when you get that, share it with somebody that that loves freedom and liberty and might want to be able to get involved with Representative McCormick's organization. All right, everybody, have a great day.